call the meeting to order, the Otero County Commissioners Planning and Zoning meeting. Lex.
Okay. Can I get an approval on the minute?
Yep.
I will move to approve the minutes.
And I will second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
Old business.
Old business, we had an annual use by review, U-568-22, to have a taekwondo and education business in an Ag Zone District A1. Property is commonly addressed as 26535 County Road 24.5, Swink, Colorado. Owner of record is William Ehrlich. This is our second review. We did a 6-month and this is the 1 year. And he has the sign up, so I think he's progressing forward, and we have not received any complaints. So the board did recommend approval with no more reviews unless there are complaints.
Okay. Anyone here to speak for or against this? Hearing none, I need a motion.
Okay, I will move to approve the annual use by review U-568-22, subject to William Ehrlich will comply with all instructions on the special use permit number 664920. No more reviews unless there are complaints.
And I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, no more old business, we'll go to new business. A use by review, U-574-23, McWilliams, Dale Dean, and Richard Riley, Atlas Tower 1, LCC applicant.
Okay, this is a use by review request to have a 310-foot self-supporting cell tower to provide coverage to Highway 350 travel corridor. Property is commonly addressed as land, US Highway 350, La Junta, Colorado. Owners of record are Dale Dean and Richard Riley McWilliams, and the applicant is Atlas Tower 1 LLC, and Mr. Powers was there to make his request to the Planning Commission Board, and he is with us today. So I did present the pictures of the property. We'll go through that real quick. So it is located between Boone and Delhi on Highway 350. And that was the notification zone, everybody that was notified of the hearing. And it's in a fragile land zone district, so there's no 1041s that would apply.
It's Bloom, not Boone, right?
Bloom.
Bloom.
Like a
Yeah.
blooming flower.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yep.
I wasn't sure you
Did
said.
I say Boone?
Well, that's what I looked at.
That's what I say,
Boone.
My L was a little silly.
Yeah, okay.
They don't
intersect anywhere. How does that one work?
Yep. Okay. So this is the actual site here in red, just on the south side of Highway 350. And this is where it is in relation to Bloom Crossing and Delhi. It's kind of between them, a little closer to Bloom.
Sorry.
Oh.
I'll go back.
Go ahead, Betty.
There you go.
Thank you.
She's got you.
That's what I needed, was the names of the towers.
Okay. And this is right off Highway 350 looking to the southwest. And there's just some simple marks. There's some utility marks there. There's a couple flags on the fence and some flags in the pasture that show where the tower will be located. And there's another one with the flag on the fence.
So this is looking out to the east, right?
This is looking to the
southeast?
southwest.
Oh, southwest-ish.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And that's pretty much it. Right there's the flag for the proposed entrance into the property, egress and ingress. And that's looking to the east-ish towards Blue. And that's pretty much it. So CDOT did have comments on this, and Atlas Tower 1 is going to go ahead and do a permit for egress, ingress. So they'll work through that process, kind of like on some of the other projects. And also the Historic Preservation Board had some comments on this one. So Mr. Lindell was there. He's the Trail Preservation Officer for the Bents Fork chapter of the Santa Fe Trail. And their concerns were mainly the view shed, partially Iron Springs, what you see from Iron Springs and stuff. And he is also here today. I'm not going to go into excruciating detail on it, but they will be here for some questions. So the big issue was, part of it was Santa Fe, or the railroad, BNSF, wanted to put a tower up, so they were trying to negotiate with them to maybe move the tower where it's not so intrusive into the view shed. And they did make a comment if Atlas Towers would be willing to co-locate with BNSF, if that's even possible, and they were amenable to that. And I'll let Mr. Lindahl or Mr. Bourne kind of comment on the view shed. And one thing we are waiting, me as land use administrator, normally we have the environmental study or the NEPA, and we don't at this time. So I just wanted that to be a consideration, because without that, it's hard to know exactly, you know, what they find or anything like that. So Mr. Bourne did talk a bit also, but the big issue was the view shed, correct? And the location of the tower. So Highway 350 is out there already, and there is a need for cell service, and it's probably the last for the railroad location that they can transmit before the Amtrak heads towards Trinidad. So their need for a tower is there also. So basically, I think we just need to, you know, if they have something they want to discuss, maybe start with Mr. Lindahl if you have any questions, or if you don't mind coming up. I'm just going to leave my thing there.
Thanks, Lex. Yep. Real quick, I'll introduce myself. Kevin Lindahl with the Dents Fork chapter of the Santa Fe Trail Association. And Larry Bourne is the president of the chapter, local chapter. If I could hand you this real quick as a reference. Yeah, this is the Iron Spring Interpretive Site.
Okay.
And this has been designated on the National Register as a historic area. Also the Bloom, this is where the tower is located. And Bloom Turn County Road, I forget, 801, it goes out to Kevin Carney's ranch, is right in here. So the red line is the Santa Fe Trail. And so the tower is approximately less than 1,000 feet from the Santa Fe Trail. The view shed from the interpretive site, and one of the reasons this area was nominated and eventually accepted on the National Register was that it had integrity of place. And by that is it has the same visual effect that you would have seen back when the trail was active. There's no other power poles, there's no modern obstructions in that. So you get a feeling that you're back in time when you're out there at the Iron Spring site. So with the location of the tower, that will definitely destroy that feeling of place.
How far is that, Kevin?
That's
Do you know?
approximately
From here to
4
here?
miles.
About 4 miles.
Yes,
That's the distance between the two?
yes. So, and I also visited with Rebecca Goodwin about this, and I believe that she has been in touch with the state SHPO's office concerning this, because there's 2 National Register locations. One is the Bloom site, and then the Iron Spring site. And so there is an adverse effect to the Santa Fe Trail by a tower being placed in that location. And I guess kind of my observation of the meeting last week, there was no mention of the Santa Fe Trail by Atlas Tower. They kind of acted like...
Can you call back? I'm in a meeting.
They kind of acted like there was no need to even research that, and that there was no significance to doing the review, which Lex mentioned a little bit ago. And I would question, do they have the cart before the horse? because of the visual effects. If they would have checked with the state SHPO's office, they would have clearly identified these areas as being on the National Register. So I feel like there was a little bit of a rush to maybe get this tower located without the due diligence and process being followed. So that kind of concerns me. I acknowledge that there is a need for cell phone service out there. It's very limited, but I think there may be alternate sites that would be more appropriate for all parties involved. So I guess I would like to see this maybe postponed so that the Santa Fe Trail Association can visit with Atlas Tower. Maybe there's some possible mitigation measures that we can discuss. And basically the Section 106 review and the reports that they have not acquired for the location. Larry, do you have anything you wanted to?
Yeah. As Kevin said, I'm Larry Bourne, the president of the Bentsport chapter of the Santa Fe Trail. Just to reiterate what Kevin said about the view site, my concern is we understand the importance of putting towers, for communication stuff out there, but we already got 2 people want towers out there. Evidently, it's a good location for them, but I'm concerned down the road. I don't want to see another wind turbine farm complex type thing out there because we're going to have towers to, for cell service. We need to look at other alternatives before we move forward. This is my concern.
Okay, thank you.
Powers, would you like to come up and address the board?
Thank you.
Yep.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Michael Powers. I'm the representative of the applicant, Atlas Tower LLC. Atlas Tower is what I would call a pure play tower co. So our business model basically is working with carriers, generally Verizon, T-Mobile, Dish Network, and AT&T. We get deliverables that they need in the form of tower infrastructure, and we go through the development process, talking to folks like you to make sure that we're compliant with your code and make sure it's good for the community and getting an approval, and then also actually constructing the site, owning the site, managing the site, and then it's a lease back to carrier. I'm going to give a few details about why here, a few details about zoning compliance, and then probably a few details about how we manage the federal regulatory piece, which speaks to the concerns about cultural resources and so on. And before I jump in, I do want to just say I hate it when this happens, when infrastructure collides with desire to maintain the status quo and to preserve cultural resources and stuff. But there is a process, and at the end of the day, I don't make the decision. So why here? Verizon has essentially tasked our company with so far about 11 sites in southeast Colorado. Pueblo, La Junta, Rocky Ford, this site. I think we approved 2 sites in this previous planning commission meeting. And we're going through a process to make sure that we are getting zoning compliance and also approval from the cities and counties. So that's what I would call state regulatory compliance. On every single site we build in the U.S., we also comply 100% with all of the federal regulatory requirements. And so the federal FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, is a federal regulatory agency, and they tell us you must comply with all federal regulatory. The interplay is a little bit interesting, but the bottom line is on every single site, including this site, we obtained through a consultant a National Environmental Policy Act report. It's usually like 100, 150 pages, and it does a big study of the site and the surroundings, and gives information about things like cultural resources. And absolutely, there will be, when the report is completed, some comment about the fact that the Santa Fe Trail, which runs from Missouri to Santa Fe, New Mexico, is visible here, because quite frankly the highway itself is also named the Santa Fe Trail on the state highway maps. So we were aware of the visual impact. We are going to get a report that notes that, and there will be a dialogue with the NEPA consultant as they do the report, with SHPO, State Historic Preservation Office, and anyone else who wants to be part of that report. But the bottom line is, this process really speaks to whether or not we've met zoning compliance. When it comes to resources that are, or cultural resources or other things that worthy of preservation that have been sort of codified in law, generally speaking, the direct conflict is when those resources are actually on the parcel. In this case, we know that the actual parcel, and probably a fairly significant radius from this site, at least 4 miles from what I'm hearing, there are no cultural resources actually on the ground, other than the trail. And that's interesting, because the trail is sometimes very, very close to that highway. So in any event, the report will come out, but I don't think we're going to learn more information necessarily about existence of additional concerns for cultural resource preservation. What we're going to learn is probably pretty much of a duplicate of what we already know, and that is that on some of these cultural resources, when you're visiting them, when you're walking on the trail at certain points, you're going to see this tower. And the hope to perhaps move this tower to a location elsewhere where it would not potentially be visible is literally impossible. It's 300. We're planning for a 310-foot structure. It definitely will be seen for many miles. And generally speaking, visual impacts of this type usually don't stop projects. I suppose it could, and that's not my place to tell you how you want to make a decision about this particular thing. But I do know that within the scope of dealing with visual resources related to Native American tribes, there is a very comprehensive regulatory body that vets out how to deal with sites where cultural resources might be nearby or on the property or have a visual impact. And generally speaking, through that FCC programmatic agreement with most of the tribes in the U.S., anything more than 1 or 2 miles, generally speaking, is considered de minimis, and it doesn't generally force either removal, cancellation of the project, or something like that. Again, I want to emphasize that the site could be moved a little bit, but it's not going to fix the visual impact that's of concern to the folks that are trying to preserve historic and cultural resources, which I totally respect. The third thing that I want to talk about was co-location, because there's been a few comments about the railroad and perhaps more towers. And our business model is to avoid the proliferation of unneeded towers. We've been in what the industry calls the co-location game from day one. All of our sites are built for at least 4 carriers. So the foundation underground exceeds Verizon's technical needs in terms of structural strength and so on by at least 400%. The tower, the same, ice loading, wind, earthquake, all of the really super technical stuff that the mechanical engineers work on when they do these sites, is multiplied by at least 4. So we are going above and beyond on this site and every site we build in the U.S. And we hope that there will be other uses that benefit the community that can be put on this tower. It could be AT&T, VRO, it could be wireless internet, it could be first responder, it could be a whole bunch of things. It could be atmospheric research or data gathering, all sorts of stuff. But I say that in the context of there is apparently been some talk about the railroad building a tower somewhere a bit north. Atlas Tower would happily have them co-locate on our structure if that met their needs. My understanding is the talk about that particular tower started about 2 years ago, and so far there's no application current in the county for that structure, so it's kind of an unknown what's going to happen with that, and it doesn't seem fair to suggest that Atlas should move to a site that was suggested by another entity 2 years ago. But within the requirement from the Verizon engineers that we provide them a site roughly within a ½ mile radius of the site where this site is essentially, is what we've done. We are happy to allow others to co-locate. We're also happy to comply with whatever rules or modifications you might decide to make, but I just want to emphasize that moving this site anything less than like 20 miles is not going to change the visual impairment, unfortunately. And so yeah, that's pretty much my whole presentation. I probably missed a thing or two. If you have any questions, I'd love to have the opportunity to answer your questions. Thank you so much.
Before you run out, I have a question. You said at one point you had mentioned about the possibility of moving it within a ½ mile of where it's located now. Is that what you were saying? It's not possible to move it further because you've already done the...
Well, let me say exactly what I was trying to convey. When we get sites from any of the carriers, the industry lingo is they give you a tower ring. And a ring is literally a circle on a map that basically say our technical problem can be fixed with antennas anywhere within this area. Because it is somewhat fungible. Even the height's a little bit fungible. The location is a little bit fungible, especially in these open areas. It's a bit different in downtown Pueblo. The ring is a lot tighter. Yeah. But for this one, the radius was about ½ mile. And the way that we ended up investing in this site and this particular parcel and this particular landowner is we sent out notices to every parcel within the search ring and said, hey landowner, we have an opportunity for you. This is what we're trying to do. There's commercial lease that you could potentially sign. We would develop a site on your land, and we ended up landing on this one. But all of the possible sites that met the engineering specs for Verizon were within a ½ mile radius.
Okay, that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
I thought you'd mentioned that. But
yeah, it's a little bit different now because we've invested in this one site, and I don't see how we could move within that radius to another parcel and make a meaningful, difference.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
On that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
Well, and just keep in mind, it is on private property.
Right.
And they have signed a contract with the owner, which could change, a lot of things. And in our land use code, Division 2, Article 7, 209, areas with archaeological, paleontological, and historical
Easy for you
importance.
to say.
You'll quote me someday. So having the NEPA report is kind of critical in a situation like this. On the ones that there is no impact, if the 106 administrator says, we don't see anything, but if you do encounter something while you're digging, please let us know. We try to always make that a stipulation, but, that's just kind of our take on it. The fact that it's private property makes it a little tricky because if you if you deny it, then that property owner may lose out on some livelihood, or, you know, we don't know the situation. But anyway, the board did recommend approval on this. There were some questions on the co-location and the study. So land use would like to make a recommendation to somehow figure out a way to at least review the study. Okay. You know, once it is available. You said 90 to 120 days?
From the ordering, I don't know what the date was, but that's already occurred.
Okay.
Yeah,
So within 120?
definitely.
Okay.
So is this normal, Lex, to do this before you get a NEPA report?
Well, if they're not an area that causes historical, archaeological, raises the question that, hey, maybe there is something buried here. If it's not in an area that SHPO or historic preservation alerts us to, we always get a report. It just does, sometimes they're done, some towers are done at the time they do the application. They've done that study ahead of time, but we always get the engineering, so it's on file. And generally, if the report is done at the time of the application, then we have it and we can glance at it. But also historic preservation, SHPO, they do make comments on all these outside sites like this. And we're gonna have another one from the same company, Atlas, on 109, but it doesn't have any issues, which we'll go over. But there's a tower a couple miles to the southeast. There's another tower just back up the hill. You can see the other tower from this new site. So it just depends on the area and the significance, you know, what it can affect. So anyway.
So my question then, you may have touched, or you may have touched this. You said there's two, the one on 109, this one, right? And then are there other ones that you guys are currently, you said you have several?
Yep, we've gone through the one just south of Highway 10 on Caldwell's property.
Okay.
SHPO, CDOT had no issues because it's
Okay.
accessed off of a county road, and everybody out there needs the service also. And the other one, you have to refresh me.
Stoddard.
Stoddard. It's on
That's
109.
yeah.
So there'll be the Stoddard one, and just, you know, maybe less than 10 miles down the road, there'll be another, because it goes into that valley, the Higbee Valley, and there's no reception.
Right.
That's why Verizon, or Viero's tower is on the top of the big hill there, so it can stretch close to Kim and still get back to La Junta. So that area has, and then we owned a tower about 2 miles from this proposed tower. It was gonna be used for sheriff, emergency communications. We didn't even know we had it, so we're in the process of selling that to the state. We had a lease from the state. They're gonna have somebody on it eventually, but anyway.
Sell it to Atlas.
It's only 60 foot tall,
Oh,
so I don't know if that'll help. Does that answer your question?
Yes, perfect answer, yes.
Okay, other than that, just kind of the things I touched on. It's a tricky thing, you
Yeah.
know? So, with that, board did recommend approval.
Okay.
And
So, yeah, can I comment first?
Yes, and I
I'll-
will comment too.
Yeah, so I certainly, from my standpoint, I understand basically two things that we need to worry about is we need to, number one, preserve the historical means of what's out there. But I also recognize the need for cell service in the area because I've traveled that highway many times and I know the need. So that's what we have to balance from our standpoint, is trying to do the best we can to compromise and meet both. And I see that's what our job is.
Yeah.
Before I say anything else, I'll let you comment.
You hit the nail on the head. That's what I was going to say too. You know, we understand cell service out here is not very good. We've owned a plumbing business and we run all over southeastern Colorado, and there's all kinds of areas where we cannot call anyone. We understand, but we also understand we're down here in an area where a lot of people come to see the Santa Fe Trail. I mean, it's something that, and to have a tower right sitting next to the Santa Fe Trail is not a very good idea either. So it's just one of those things. It's a tough decision.
yeah.
Good? Good. So with that said, I'm going to read something here and then we'll go from there. So I move to approve the use, and this is based on by the recommended approval from the land use. The use by review U-574-23 subject to, number one, we discussed this, within 120 days, Atlas Tower 1 LLC will submit to Otero County Land Use Administrator, the NEPA, National Environmental Protection Act report before beginning any construction at the communication tower site, according to the Otero County Land Use Code. Division 2, the Natural Resource Protection Standards for Land Use Change, Article 7-209, areas with, here we go, Lex, archaeological, paleontological, or historical importance. Upon receipt of the NEPA report, the 106 administrator will review and advise the Otero County Commissioners. And then number 2, Dale Dean and Richard Riley McWilliams at Atlas Tower 1 will follow all instructions on the special use permit U-5-74-23 within their entirety.
And I will second it. That's a mouthful.
Okay.
I will second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
So a quick question on that, not to complicate it, but we get the NEPA study back. If the 106 administrator, it'll go to SHPO and local historic preserve. If they find in the report that there is, it'll be a new consultation and possibly a revoke or remove the tower. I don't know what that would be, but we're waiting for the 106 administrator to review the thing. So there's a possibility, though you did approve it now, that if this something is found, it could change things in the future.
And that's based on the NEPA report, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
Is it possible for me to make a statement on the record about the basically the regulatory procedure? Okay.
Yeah.
So, this process is defined and controlled by land use zoning, and the NEPA process is controlled and defined by the federal government's governmental body, the FCC. When we do the NEPA report, that's a requirement by federal law. And the other requirement by federal law is to have a discussion / notification / something else with state historic preservation officers and other resources about cultural stuff. But this process here with the Board of County Commissioners is essentially a review of whether or not this project, as applied and proposed to be built, meets zoning code. So, sure, we're going to get the NEPA report. We're happy to delay so that everyone can read that and see it. But I'm very confident that report isn't going to tell us anything new about cultural resources on the parcel. So we applied on this specific parcel. Zoning says it should be administratively approved if it meets the zoning code. And so I think when we come back next time, I could be wrong, but I think when we come back next time, we're going to have sort of the same discussion. It's going to be, oh, there are cultural resources nearby, like nearby within 5 to 10 miles. Those, when visiting those cultural resources, you will be able to see the structure. So there is some degradation in the subjective mind of a diminishment of that cultural resource, because now it doesn't look closer to what it looked like in the 1800s. But it's not going to change the zoning regulations and whether or not you approve it via that set of rules. Mm-hmm. So I just want to, because I think we're probably setting ourselves up to have this exact same conversation again in 120 days, and I'm happy to do that. But I just wanted to make sure that unless the NEPA report says something other than a visual affect from a different location, not on this parcel, I believe that we should get, pursuant to your zoning code, an approval.
Okay.
And comment on that? Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You know more than I do about it. You go. I'll just give my comment after you go.
You may be correct, but our land use code specifically says in Article 7-209, areas with archaeological, paleontological, or historic importance. when it refers to that, we have to abide by the code. And that's all I'm doing as land use administrator, is saying, hey, let's get the report. Maybe it won't show anything, but I just have to do my diligence, you know, and answer to the.
Right. Yeah, and historically, that's what it's been done in the past, is you wait to a NEPA report and then you go, correct?
Yes.
No, well, I've done a lot of these across the US, and generally speaking, most codes don't require a presentation of a NEPA report for the zoning review because it's a different body of law. The county can't enforce FCC regulation, but you can say you must comply with it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
basically what's happening.
Yeah, and that's why we're trying to follow Article 7-209.
I'm not objecting. I'm just saying that as a pure zoning matter, we carefully selected this parcel and put it in the location where it is, so that it would meet the code and be approvable. And then whether a visual impact of a state highway or a tower is so visually degrading of the historic or cultural resource that you want to deny it, that's a different story.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it just looks to me like this would have been a whole lot easier, since you know the Santa Fe Trail is there, if you would have gotten a NEPA report before you did this. It looked like you kind of have the cart before the horse, because we don't know until we hear from it.
Yeah,
So,
from 106.
right, yeah.
So here's my question logistically for you.
Sure.
Unless you want to answer him.
No.
Did you have an answer?
Only
It's more of a comment.
Only
I know.
that, yeah, I totally agree. It would have been great if the NEPA report was completed and disseminated amongst all the parties before we got to this point. But it's not actually a requirement of your process or virtually anyone's process generally in the US. There aren't very many zoning and towns and counties that are trying to also regulate what the FCC is already regulating through that, matrix of laws and regulations.
Right.
But yeah, absolutely. We usually try to have those available. In this case, it wasn't. I'll be frank. We're trying to move fast. We're hoping to build these sites before the snow hits. And
how long does it take to do a site, to build one?
Like 45 days.
Okay.
The building is the easy part. All of the regulatory is difficult, and also coordinating with fiber and power companies and getting all of the approvals and so on. And post-COVID, just sourcing materials, the actual tower, the electrical junction boxes and stuff. You'd be amazed how hard they are to get. I mean, waiting 5 months for a meter bank, it's insane. So yeah, but the construction itself super fast. Excavate a big hole, bring in concrete rebar, pour the concrete, compact the soil, truck shows up, cranes on site one day, tower stacked, and then after that it's like two workers in a truck visiting to put on antennas and dial in all the computer stuff, and that process is intermittent for like 6 months.
Well, we thank you. We know the need. I mean,
Yes,
it's
for
not
sure.
that we don't.
Yeah.
We understand. I've lived here my whole life, and I understand the need for it. So,
Well, I appreciate it, and I regret the conflict between development and keeping things the same. It's a time-old story, unfortunately.
right.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
Thank
So we'll
you.
go to the next one. Lex.
moving on.
Yep.
This is a use by review, special use permit U-575-23. Request to have a 305-foot self-supporting cell tower to provide coverage on US 109 area. Property is commonly addressed as land, US Highway 109, La Junta, Colorado. Owners of record are Zane and Barbara Leininger, and the applicant is Atlas Towers 1 LLC. There's no potable water or wastewater needs, and we kind of discussed a little bit. CDOT has commented, requesting a permit to do egress, and historic preservation commented that there were no historic things that they knew of. So again, when we get a NEPA report on that, I'm sure you'll give us a copy of it. But so this one didn't have the same kind of issues. And the board did recommend approval. I'll run through real quick and show you where it's located. So Leininger's property is there on the kind of the southwest side of 109. Notification zone, everybody that was notified of the hearing. And it's in a fragile land zone also, so there's no 1041 regulations that would apply to this.
Is this going to be pretty much right next to the highway, Lex?
Yeah, maybe 100 feet off or
Yeah,
something.
they're all kind of the same.
Yeah, so roughly where I have the red box is where it's located. The next road that can turn off of there is what we call the gun barrel. It's the road to Bobo, Pickleboro Canyon. And this is at the site looking straight to the south from 109. And same place, you can see the flags right there, the orange flags and the tape on the fence. That will be the egress to the property. And you can see the tower on the hill on the left, just off of the highway. It's the other tower that's already located there, and that's looking back towards the north, towards La Junta from the site. And one more, just the pretty clouds.
That's right. Did you hear me? Look at the photography.
Yeah. So, land use doesn't have any issues. The board did recommend approval, and there were no other concerns brought to the planning commission board.
Okay. And that's what makes this one different, is there wasn't any issues with Santa Fe Trail or anything historically that had anything to worry about, right?
Yeah, I mean, 10 miles away, there's canyons with petroglyphs and stuff, but it's not the same impact. So it was
not the view shed and all that stuff, so yeah.
You know, and if the NEPA report were to come back, you know, we would say, hey, can we address this also?
Okay, but that's the difference between this one and the other one.
Correct.
Okay, so I will move to approve the use by review U-575-23, subject to Zane J. and Barbara A. Leininger and Atlas Tower 1 LLC will follow all instructions on the special use permit U-575-23 within their entirety.
And I will second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Lex, anything else?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, if nothing else, we are adjourned.